Hi there YouTube, welcome back to an impromptu video. I thought that I would actually do a kind of how I paint my French miniatures. I'm going to do it in several little cuts. I've tried doing it sort of live and it was just taking too long. I mean, I got sort of this far and it was like one part of the video was like 35 minutes long, and I thought no, that's too long. I'm just going to do it concisely and quickly. So basically, I start off with a black undercoat like this. There's one that I've from my to-do pile. I tend to just brush undercoat my figures, so I'd use Vallejo's surface primer. I've got a big bottle of it here. I have black, I have white, I have grey. And then I'll use a semi-big brush, so something like this. This one is, in fact, actually that's one of my old school brushes. It's got some brush soap on actually. That's why it was a little bit stiff there. This brush I sometimes use for undercoating, but I tend to use a slightly bigger brush than that actually. Something a bit more like this. Nice and very, very soft. Good coverage in comparison to a figure if you look at the brush in comparison to the size of the figure. And so I'd load the brush up, wipe off any excess, and then I'll always start in the area that's got the least detail. So I'd start with the trousers, and if it does have any pooling of paint, then I'd literally just disperse that around the rest of the figure, and very quickly and efficiently you can get a whole battalion done. And then you don't have all the bother of having to carry them outside and use your spray can and risk the spray can being affected by the humidity or the cold. And of course then you have things like mist spots and stuff like that, where when you're doing it with a big brush like that you tend not to miss spots. So that takes care of like all the undercoating and stuff. Now obviously, because my attempt on this figure failed, we're going with a figure that has had its first coat of blue on. I always start with the jackets, so this is the paint that I tend to use. I use the Foundry System French Blue, shade A, which is the first dark shade. Now I would normally put a second, this is quite a thin paint, so you tend to always have to put more than one coat on, sometimes two, sometimes three, although to tell the truth not always full coats, but you do generally have to at least put two coats on. So this guy has actually already got his first coat on, but I'll go slightly out of step, and I'll just go back over his blue now rather than later. And I'm just using a slightly bigger brush as well. This is an old Army Painter regimental size brush. It was basically faulty from the day I bought it. It kind of never had a point. But I do like these brushes because they do allow you to cover big areas fast. So you can get into all the nooks and crannies with it. And like I say, you don't have to be too tidy at this stage. But I do tend to try and leave things that aren't blue unblue if I possibly can. But if it's too much trouble, I'll just go over it, because I tend to go over anything that's a different colour in Deck Tan in sort of the next stage, or a few stages time. So there we go, there's the figure with all his blue on. Not a lot of blue on these guys. Basically from the front it's just his arms. Around the back it's more or less, well, his whole back is blue, but obviously you've got his cartridge box, his water gourd and his backpack taking up space. But you do have to remember to do his great coat, which is on the top of his backpack, and also his porte d'armes, or his soft cap, which is underneath his cartridge case. So there we go, that's all the blue done. I'll stop it here and read back when I've done the next part. Okay, I've done the next few stages. For these I used my size 1 brush, my Winsor & Newton Series 7 size 1. which I've had going for probably about 6 years, maybe even 7 years now. It's a great brush. It was well worth the £12 that I paid for it. But of course I have got my broken toed brushes in reserve. I will start to bring those in at some point, but this is my main brush for now. And if I go to the figure, you can see we have obviously done his blue. We have done the black, so we've done his boots, his bear skin, his sobriquet, and I always do the top of his bayonet too, where the bayonet touches the musket, going up to the top of the point, and of course cartridge case. The next stage after that was to paint his backpack. Now for backpacks I use, for the Imperial Guard, green-brown. Now the Imperial Guard, because they were issued standardised equipment, all their backpacks were made the same, so they basically all have the same backpacks. Some, I suppose, would probably maybe cross marks, so you know, if there was like a Mark III backpack, that's not uncommon for people to have Mark II still going, because you'd swap your old gear over with new gear when it was necessary. And the Imperial Guard were very up on their supplying their troops. They'd have like kit inspections, and they'd have entire sort of sections of the regiment set up just for looking after parts of their equipment, and getting new equipment in, and swapping equipment over in the warehouse, etc, etc. So they all have the same colour backpacks, unlike the regular French that tended to just be given them a backpack as a backpack made out of many various colours and combinations. I think, and of course also I did his flash, the first colour of flash. So for that I use where's it gone? Panzer Ace's flash base. This is the first colour of flash that I would put on. And the other thing I did, actually I haven't done it yet, it was on my other figure. The next thing I'd do is paint his musket brown, and for muskets, French muskets in particular, I use a chocolate brown, so I'll be doing that. And I think after that we're probably ready to start doing the base coating over everything that's white and everything that's going to be red, and I'll do that using Deck Tan. So I'm going to cut it here, and we'll be back when that stage is done. Okay, we're back, and you can see that I've filled in all the white now, and it does look doesn't actually look too bad actually. So at this stage, it does actually, though I'd say, look a little bit better on camera than it actually does in real life. But it doesn't matter. The next stage for the white will be a wash of Vallejo pale grey ink, and when that's dry, I will go in and just run a brush loaded up with some Nullen oil, this stuff. I'll go around his pockets, I'll go in just underneath the jacket, I'll go around the strapping, just to kind of put a sort of a black line to show sort of shadow around his sort of around his front, and then at the very end I always go in with a bit of pure white, just to bring parts of it back up to a sort of a little bit more pure white. It doesn't really make that much difference when it's dry, to tell the truth, but it just brings the colour back up after you've put the grey ink on. Now sometimes I do that at a slightly later stage, but in this particular case I'm going to do it now because it doesn't really make too much difference. So I'll just quickly do the grey ink stage live on camera. If I can find where I put it, I've mislaid it. Where are you? Here it is. So this is actually quite a good wash to put over white. I'll use my just my normal size one, and I'll just tell you the truth, apart from it just slightly dulling down the white, you hardly even notice you're putting it on, to tell the truth. And I'll do his front as well. So there's that stage done. You can see that it hasn't made too much difference, but it's just kind of brought the white down probably about maybe half a shade. You could leave it there if you wanted. Obviously I'm going to have to leave this to dry, but like I say, I tend to go in after this stage with Nuln Oil, but of course again I'll do that live so you can see that. The next stage I'd do is I would now get some Vallejo camo black brown. Sometimes if I had more paint in the actual bottle, I could use chocolate brown for doing that, but any sort of dark brown is good. I do find that German camo black brown is really good for putting under things you want to be gold. So that's more or less what we're going to be doing. We're going to be going over his sabre briquet handle because only the front of it's showing, and also the bottom of his sabre briquet where there's the brass cap, or the gold cap, because it's sort of a goldy brass. So I'll just do that live on camera again. So the bottom of his sabre briquet, the top part of his sabre briquet that you can actually see, which isn't a lot of it to tell the truth. It's just the very, very front of it. So there's that done. What else? We have buttons, so the 3 buttons of his cuffs, and the 2 bronze pins that hold his sabre briquet into its frog. The detail on his cartridge case, so we've got a little brass grenade in each corner, an eagle and a crown. Also we will do the little grenades that are on his bottom of his turnbacks, like that. We'll also do the grenade that's on the top of his bearskin, so there, and also 3 buttons of his torso that you can see, and of course the eagle plate on the top of his, or on his bearskin. And that, apart from the brass that's on his musket, which we'll do later, that is all the browns done on him. And obviously if I decide to make this guy give him brown hair, I would obviously just paint that in now. But I think we're going to have black hair on this guy, so, or maybe even grey. I think we'll have grey actually. So I guess I could do that next. Now, like I say, because this is the 1st battalion, it's going to have the biggest amount of like really old dog veterans in. So I like to put a bunch of guys in with greyer hair, so I tend to use for my greys, I use deck tan, and I also use medium sea grey, which makes for a great grey, you know, maybe sort of somebody in their sort of late 30s who's had sort of like I don't know, 20 plus years in the army, and has obviously been through lots of campaigns, and has just gone grey basically. So at this stage I'll just do this off camera actually, because it's a little bit, it needs to be a little bit delicate. So I'm just basically going over his hair, which of course at the moment is painted black. And also at this stage I'm going to put his sideburns in. Okay, and I'll do his moustache. So again, I'm just going to go off camera for doing this. If I can find where my grey is, there it is. It's kind of awkward having to paint with the camera right in my way. So I'm sorry for having to keep going off camera, but I want to try and do a decent job. I'm one of those painters that likes to keep the figure close to me when I paint. Just natural habit. I mean, I do wear glasses, but I don't wear them for close-in stuff. So I'm basically just doing his moustache. And these guys have got nice moustaches to paint, these elite miniatures. So here we go. So you can see that this guy has got his grey moustache, his grey sideburns, and his grey hair. Okay, so that's that stage done. Next up, I guess we'll do his musket. So for muskets I use Vallejo Model Air Metallics Gun Grey, which I paint on, because obviously this stuff you can use for painting as well as airbrushing. Just don't need too much for one figure, because it's only his musket barrel that's metallic. And I'll just paint that in. I'll take it up to the part where the bayonet fixes, to the other side. There we go. Yep, okay, it's done. So there's the musket barrel painted in. And then after the musket barrel, of course, comes the bayonet. Now I always use, for my swords and my bayonets, I use Vallejo steel. Again, don't need too much of it because I'm literally painting one guy. I've probably got too much there. Doesn't matter. So again, with the bayonets I would tend to just go over everything that's black, even if it involves going over the barrel again, the very, very top of the barrel, because you don't actually see that part anyway. So there we go, there's that part done, nice and easy. I guess the next stage will be gold. Again, might as well do that live while we're going. So for my gold, I use Vallejo Old Gold. This is a great colour. Now this particular paint is, I'm not sure if it's just mine, but sometimes it can be a little bit watery. So I find that you have to sort of load your brush up well with it to be able to paint it on. So let's get going. So the first thing I'm going to do is the bottom of the sobriquet. I'll then do his sobriquet itself. And again, you see I have to load the paintbrush up. And I'll do the two little pins of his sobriquet strap. And then we will do the 3 buttons on the cuff and on the front of the cuff on the other arm. We will do his buttons. And his bearskin plate. Like so. And then finally, actually at this point I'll wash my brush out and just get the point back on it. Because we're going to do the eagle, the detail on his cartridge case next. So as if you remember me saying, there's the 4 grenades in either corner. Then there's an eagle on a perch, and then there's the crown at the very top. So there we have the cartridge case done. And at this stage the gunmetal's dry, so I can go in and do the bronze on his, because the French use a sort of gold bronze anyway, so I tend to use old gold for it. So the bronze parts on a French musket are the trigger guard, and then there's 3 bands of brass around the actual musket itself, and also there's a bronze cap on the bottom of the butt, but you can't see that in this case. So there should be a band just below where the bayonet connects. So there we go. Quite an easy step, that one. I think that's all the base colours, and the first stage of his sort of white uniform shaded. The next thing I'm going to do is I'll probably go in with the null and ink and do his strapping and the under part of his jacket with some black, with a little thin stripe of null and oil. And then I will also do his first parts of face shading. Now, because I want this guy to be sort of like an old dog, I'm actually going to use some black paint to carefully put some black. I basically go into the eyeball and I sort of fill it in black, and this just kind of gives him a kind of a deeper, a much blacker eye, as if he's sort of aged. It works quite well. I'm going to have to do this off camera obviously because it needs to be quite delicate. There we go. So you can see that I've gone in and I've done the recesses of his eyes black. Let's do melon oil next. I'm trying to do this chunk live so you can actually see some painting. Now there's lots of little stages at this point. So what I tend to do is I tend to just run the melon oil just around the strapping. Now also I've spotted that his backpack strap there has actually got a little bit of red in it. Okay, that's that part done. You can't really see it, to tell the truth, but you obviously can see it when you're looking at it, not via the camera. So that is, we're making pretty good progress. We're probably about, I don't know, maybe 70–75% done. Next stage will be some Agrax Earthwash shade on the flesh. So the black that I put in the eyes should be dry by now. So we'll just do the hands. And then we'll do face. I also tend to just go over the gold plate as well on his top of his hat. Excuse me. Okay, I think that's all good. I'll also just do his some Agrax Earth shade of his musket. Best point. That's nice and easy. So there he is. There he is at this stage. All the base colours are on. All the second stage colours are on, and all the shading's done now. We're starting to get, like I say, pretty near to finishing this guy. Next stage, I'll probably go in now with the stage B of the French blue. So this is slightly lighter than the shade A. I tend not to use much of it. I tend to I'll just go over his arm, like the outside of his arm, like this. And I'll just kind of just go over his long coat, and I might just run the brush down the backs of his, the insides of his tan backs. So there, that's that stage done. You don't, obviously he hasn't got that much blue, so you don't need to use a lot of that particular colour at this stage. So that's that part done. Next we'll go for shade. Let's shade his red up. So here we go. This is where I kick in with my my old school Citadel ink, which I haven't got a lot of. You can see I've got about maybe a millimetre left. We'll just give that a little shake. So this is what the stuff looks like, and I'll try and see if it's sharp on camera. So I'll load my brush up with some. What I'll do is plume. So let's get it focused, and can't really see it, can you? So that's don't think it's showing up on camera, but trust me in the fact that when I say that you paint this stuff on, the red becomes a lot more vibrant. Do the middle of his bare skin there. I do the turnbacks of his jacket and his epaulets. I try and do his collar as well. And I also will do just the visible parts of his cuff, and of course the sobriquet tassel. There we go. Just make sure I've got the front of his plume. There we go, there's all the red done. Now, I'm not sure if that's coming up as looking brighter, but I can assure you that it certainly looks brighter in real life. So that's the red out the way. Next stage I will be doing is the eyeballs. So for this, I use Deck Tan for eyeballs lately. I did used to use Off-White, and I still don't think there's particularly anything wrong with Off-White, but I have kind of fallen in love with using Deck Tan lately. I think it makes a really nice eyeball colour. Oh. Hey YouTube, sorry about that. It's actually the next day now. I got a phone call and I got drawn away, so I had to stop. So we're back the next day. It's dark and dull outside, so I'm not sure if the quality is going to be that amazing. But basically all I've done is I have actually put his eyeballs in now. You can see them there, using Deck Tan. And the next stage I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do his, I guess I'll go for the eyeballs next. So let's, I just use black generally for eyeballs. Sometimes if it's like some sort of a special character or something, I'll sometimes use a different colour, but generally I just go for black. And for doing his eyeballs, because these guys have quite small eyes, I'm going to use one of my broken toe brushes, my 3/0. So it's quite thin. So I'm going to have to do this off camera, obviously. So there you go, he's got his eyeballs in now. And next up we are going to do the highlights for his flash. Now, something that I forgot to mention a little earlier was that at some point between my first, well, I suppose you wouldn't see it because they're all kind of edited together, but at some point during the process of putting base colours on, I added some Barbarian Flash over his base flash tone. This just brightens the flash up a little bit, and you can also leave the base flash to make some shadow, and that step goes on before I actually put the Agrax Earthwash, which is the third stage of putting the flash on. Now for highlighting, for this particular, for sort of like my general figures, I use flat flash. So let's try and get a little bit out because we really don't need much of this at all. There's not much flash at all on these guys. So what I always do the hands first. So I'll just go across the back of his hand and just go down each individual figure, just do his knuckles, and then same sort of thing, just towards the ends of his fingers, and on his thumb, and on the side of the hand, both sides of the hand. Okay, so that's the hands done. Very simple. And next up, we'll do the face. Now, what I tend to do, and these guys have got pretty good faces for doing highlights, so I always start with the tip of his nose, like that, and then I do his cheek, just going to quickly go off camera so I can just delicately get in between his sideburn and I just do the very bottom of his chin. And there we go. So there's the highlighting done. There's one more stage before his flash will be finished. So now I'm just going to quickly have a look over. Another stage that I obviously did but forgot to mention was that after I'd finished doing the deck tan over all his white and bits that were going to be red, the first colour I paint on after that is off-white, and then as soon as that's dry, then I'll give it the shade, the shading, and the null and oil, and then finally the final step to finishing off the white is that I use some pure white, in this case Army Painter matte white. Now it's not a particularly amazing white this, but it does go well on if the undercut, if the colour that you're painting it on is actually white. Otherwise, it goes quite transparent, but it is definitely a shade brighter than off-white. And obviously, where he's got his shading on his trousers and stuff, it'll show up quite well. So I'm just basically going to do the sort of the front parts of his pantaloons. Like that. And I'll just run a bead or a stripe of white up his straps. Do you want to paint them fully over, because you can leave in some of the shadowing. And I'm going to just do the rest of his pantaloons. Okay, and then we'll also just sort of touch the white over some of his cord on his hat and the there we go, and just a little bit on his musket strap. And that's about it. The final thing to do is to finish the strapping on his greatcoat, which is a little bit fiddly, I've got to admit, in these particular guys. I don't know if you can see that, but it kind of has like these indentations, so the strapping is like indented into the greatcoat. So you have to kind of really carefully just run your brush up the indentations of the greatcoat, and you've got to be quite careful to obviously not go wrong, otherwise you're going to have to get the glue out and go over it. Although to tell the truth, you've still got one more layer of glue to go on, so if it is a little bit untidy, you can just touch it up then. So that is the strapping done there. Now he's almost done now. We've got basically two more stages to go. The first stage will be to finish off the flesh, so we go back in with some Agrax Earth Wash. I'm basically just going to go over his flesh again, where we've put the highlights on, and all it does is the highlight is still there, but it just tones it down a little bit. So there we go. And then the final stage is basically a grey, little bit of dry brushing to highlight his bare skin and any sort of black areas. So I tend to use London Grey for this. Don't need much. Probably enough. And I use I think this is a small dry brush. It's an old Army Painter one that I got in the paintbrush setup, I believe. But this is, it's a nice size. I think I have one that's slightly smaller, but that's almost too small. So I tend to use this sort of size. And we don't need, like I say, we don't need much paint because actually, I think I need to shake my London Grey up a little bit more because that was a little bit dark. We'll try again. That's better. Yeah, if I'd painted that on, it would have more or less just been like black. You wouldn't have even seen anything. So wash your dry brush out well. And I like to try and get it as dry as I can. There we go. So back into the grey again. This time it's a lot lighter. That's what I'm after. Brush off the excess onto a paper towel. And then I'll just go over the black of his bare skin, front of his shoes, the zebra bouquet, and that's him. I think more or less done. I'll just kind of go over him and just give him a look over. So as you can see, one Old Guard Grenadier. There's just actually one more stage that I did forget, and that is just to give a final highlight of the third colour of blue. Now this is such a small step that it's probably why I kind of forgot to do it. All I literally do is just touch. I just kind of like a stripe along the side of his arm, and the same on the front here, the other arm, and then I'd just put a little bit on his greatcoat, and maybe a little bit on his elbow. To tell the truth, and you don't really see this, to tell the truth, but that's that done. And that is this figure complete, apart from varnishing. Now I'm not going to varnish this guy yet because I like to varnish all my figures at the same time. But the varnishes that I use, again I use a brush to brush varnish them. And if they're metal figures, I'll give them a coat of this polyurethane gloss varnish by Vallejo. And when that's dry, I will give them a final coat of matte acrylic varnish by Vallejo, and that gets rid of any shine. And that is that. That is how I paint one of my French, or in this case an Old Guard Grenadier. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Sorry about missing a few stages and sort of having to go off camera and stuff, but obviously just due to setup, really. I mean, I think the first painting video I ever done was on painting a desert Italian, and I basically used my iPhone for that. And this is really the first time I've tried to do it with my main sort of camera, and hopefully it's come out okay. So until next time, I hope you enjoyed it, and catch you all later. Bye bye.